More and more, Hollywood studios are not okay with bad behavior from their talent or their executives. Case in point, Adult Swim has just fired Justin Roiland from the hit show that he co-created, Rick and Morty, which is probably by far the most popular show on Adult Swim.
I have English homework. Still learning English? It's the language you speak. How dumb are you?
Now remember, Adult Swim is owned by the Cartoon Network, and the Cartoon Network is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. Justin Roiland is being charged with 2 felony counts, one of domestic violence with corporal injury and 1 felony count of false imprisonment by menace, violence, fraud, and or deceit. The incident occurred on or around January 19th, 2020 in connection with a woman he was dating at the time. The complaint states her name simply as Jane Doe to protect her identity. Now, Adult Swim has stated that the show will continue, that they are hard at work with season 7, and the show has been picked up all the way through season 10. Now, everyone is shocked and dismayed. Justin Roiland was the voice talent for Rick and Morty.
Oh, Morty. Help me, Morty. Help me, Rick. Help me, Rick. Perfect.
And several other characters. Now, people are saying, well, the show is just going to die because without Roiland, it cannot go on. But I would like to argue that in Hollywood, there are a lot of very talented voice actors out there who could easily take his role. I believe there's a guy on TikTok who's very well known, and people are already saying he could take over his role.
Hey, I'm Pickle Rick. Wubba-lubba-dub-dub. Doesn't mean that I'm the guy who does Rick. I'm not Justin Roiland. Just because I can go, Mr. Meeseeks, look at me! I just want to die! Does not mean that I'm Justin Roiland.
I want to talk a little bit about the felony charges and Hollywood's intolerance of people, typically men, who are bad actors in the context of the Me Too movement. Now, I talked about the Me Too movement in the context of my Try Guys videos. Make sure to catch those if you haven't, I'll link them below. But we have no indication that the woman here is an employee, as in the Try Guys and Ned Fulmer situation. But Hollywood is very, very sensitive of any domestic violence charges because of Harvey Weinstein. The Me Too movement was started by Tarana Burke back in 2006, and it picked up traction in 2017 when ALYSSA MILANO tweeted out Me Too in the face of all of the allegations that came out against Harvey Weinstein. Now, in the 5 years since Hollywood joined the Me Too movement, a lot of things have happened. Harvey Weinstein has been convicted of sexual violence against many actresses and employees and women in Hollywood. It's just been brutal. But more and more things are coming out. Unfortunately, it seems like every week there's something new. Hollywood is basically a breeding ground for mistreatment of women and children. I recently covered this in my Romeo and Juliet's video, which I will link below, where the child actors were basically forced to perform child porn. And before we turn to the felony charges against Justin Roiland, let's address all these DMs that have been coming out on Twitter after the charges against Roiland were filed, as well as the news of him being fired from Rick and Morty was announced. I think what is happening is these girls who were underage at the time probably didn't feel like they could come out and say anything. And you have to realize that these girls were really young. Here they were being contacted and followed by the creator of their favorite show. They were probably just excited to be talking to him. And I think the beauty with the Me Too movement is it gives victims a sense of power and solidarity with other victims, and so they feel safer in coming out and sharing their stories. Now, some would argue that these might be fake, but the sheer volume of DMs being shared makes it hard to argue that. Some of these DMs are so inappropriate. They're derogatory and misogynistic and criminal. I mean, he is saying things like, you look like jailbait. Why are you such jailbait? You should, when you turn 18, you can go cam whoring. My mind is just, I can't comprehend and wrap itself around all of this. And there's also a video of a girl coming out and showing her account and clicking on Roiland's profile to show that it's real. I believe these are real. I mean, there's a sheer volume here that would be hard to fake. Now, Justin Roiland's felony charges include domestic violence with corporal injury. Now, corporal injury means that serious bodily injury was inflicted. It's not just battery. Battery could imply even just a grab, or it's lesser injury than corporal injury. Now, the false imprisonment charge is interesting. It basically means that you hold somebody against their will in a location. Now, how this differs from kidnapping is kidnapping means that you move a person from place to place and then you hold them somewhere. So this is the exact definition of what false imprisonment means. So false imprisonment by itself is a misdemeanor, but when you combine it with violence, duress, fraud, deceit, or threat of unlawful injury, then that becomes a felony. The elements for false imprisonment cases dictate that the defendant did the following: intentionally detained, restrained, or confined another person. The restraint made the victim stay or go somewhere for a period of time. Victim did not give their consent and was harmed. The conduct was a significant factor in causing the victim's harm. The crucial issue of restraint, detention, or confinement is not required that a victim be locked up in a room or a closet. Rather, it's considered false imprisonment when someone is simply detained or confined by use of force, fraud, or threat of force. This could include the use of physical barriers such as furniture to prevent them from leaving. Misdemeanor, false imprisonment, you could face up to a year in county jail plus a fine of $1,000. When it's a felony, meaning the crime included violence, fraud, menace, or deceit, then you're facing 16 months, 2 years, or 3 years in county jail and a fine of $10,000. And the term menace means there was a threat of violence, but it doesn't have to be communicated verbally, rather simply implied to be the defendant's conduct. This is basically what Justin Roiland is facing, right? He could be facing up to 3 years in prison with a fine of $10,000, and that's not including the domestic violence felony charges. So that this means 2 felony charges. Now, some of you might ask, well, he hasn't been convicted yet. He's not guilty. But in the news stories that broke, there were indications that there was a lot of evidence, and usually, the DAs don't like to charge someone unless they have an indication that they can win their case. I think this is potentially the case in the Alec Baldwin involuntary manslaughter cases. I covered that story in detail in my video. Make sure to catch it at the end. And in the Brian Kohlberger case, where he's just been charged with an affidavit, the police do not have to reveal all of their evidence when they are charging. They just have to give the judge enough to charge the defendant. Please make sure to subscribe if you've learned something. It really does help my channel. So what's next for Justin Roiland? Well, Hulu has just announced that they are dropping Justin Roiland from Solar Opposites and Koala Man. Justin Roiland has just resigned from the company that he founded called Squanch Games, where Roiland served as CEO, and they have a very popular game called High on Life. Roiland started Squanch Games in 2016 with former Epic Games executive TANYA Watson. Back then, the company was called Squanch Tendo. It refers to the planet Squanch on Rick and Morty. Roiland is due back in court on April 27th for a pretrial hearing, and his attorney, T. Edward Wellborn, has said in a statement, "Not only is Justin innocent, but we have every expectation that this matter is on course to be dismissed once the district attorney's office has completed its methodical review of the evidence." That sounds a little weird because the DA has performed a review of the evidence, and that's why they decided to charge Roiland. Now, that statement would have made more sense had they said, once we go to trial and we present our counter evidence as our defense, then the charges will be dropped. It seems a little suspicious, but I'll keep you guys updated as to what is happening. I am going to have a live stream this weekend. I hope you guys can catch it. It's going to to address the Alec Baldwin case. I have done a lot more research on what I believe is going to happen. I'm shocked that he's been charged, but that doesn't mean I'm actually on his side. I'm just shocked that he was charged, but I think he was charged not simply because he was an actor, but also because he was a producer on a production that has had a slew of safety violations and complaints that basically went unaddressed by the production. I will talk about the fact that Alec Baldwin really should have asserted his Fifth Amendment rights to stay silent and wait for his attorney, and he didn't do that. I will touch upon potentially the Brian Kohlberger case. It's been a very, very busy week, but I am here to provide my legal analysis as an attorney. I've been a licensed attorney in California for 17 years, 15 of them in Hollywood, working for big companies like Disney and Skydance, as well as several big law firms. I'm Tyler, the Hollywood attorney. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys soon. Okay, bye.